This is the second video in the series of fundamentals of lesson planning. The focus is functions of lesson planning. First of all, can you complete the following sentence in your own words? A lesson plan is. I suppose a lesson plan can be in various forms like a written document, a short note, or even some bullet points, but it is definitely important to all teachers. In this lecture, we will go through three main parts: definition of a lesson plan, components of a lesson plan, and absolutely its functions. There exists a variety of definitions of a lesson plan. I will soon show you some definitions, but when you read them, please think about two questions here. Which definition is or are the most appropriate to teachers of English? Why? Which definitions is or are not appropriate for teachers of English? Why not? Let's go to the definitions themselves. On the screen are some definitions of a lesson plan. Number 1. A lesson plan is a written description of how students will move toward attaining specific objectives. It describes the teaching behavior that will result in student learning. Number 2. A lesson plan is a written document which helps the teacher to know what to do in the class, prepared by themselves with quite specific activities. Number 3. Lesson plans are systematic records of a teacher's thoughts about what will be covered during the lesson. And number 4. A lesson plan is a written document used in planning a presentation. Which one do you think is the most appropriate, or which one is the least? As for me, definition number 4 is the least suitable because teaching is much more than a presentation. Imagine starting a journey but with no idea where you are going. You are the driver of a bus full of students, and although you know you have to drive them for a particular period of time, without your map, you have no idea where you want to go or how to get there. Here are some more reasons why it is essential to plan. Planning helps the teacher identify the aim as a navigation tool for the lesson. Planning is a sign of professionalism. Students expect teachers to be professional. If you are prepared, the students can tell. They also know if you are not prepared. So planning is a way to help gain the respect of the students. By planning, you are considering your teaching situation and your particular students. As we have seen, lessons need to have certain elements and features such as ESA, engage, study, activate. Planning encourages teachers to consider these points and ensure they are included in the lesson. Planning gives the teacher a chance to predict possible problems in the class and think about ways to deal with them. So, what constitutes a lesson plan? There are mainly 8 components of a lesson plan, as you can see in the sample. In the objective section of your lesson plan, write precise and delineated goals for what you want the students to be able to accomplish after the lesson is completed. In order to define your lesson's objective, consider asking yourself the following questions. What will students accomplish during this lesson? To what specific level, for example, 75% accuracy, will the students perform a given task in order for the lesson to be considered satisfactorily accomplished? Exactly how will the students show that they understood and learned the goals of your lesson? Will this occur through a worksheet, group work, presentation, illustration, etc.? Additionally, you will want to make sure that the lesson's objective fits in with your district and/or state educational standards for your grade level. By thinking clearly and thoroughly about the goals of your lesson, you will ensure that you are making the most of your teaching time. To write an effective lesson plan, you must define the anticipatory set. This is the second step of an effective lesson plan. In the anticipatory set section, you outline what you will say and/or present to your students before the direct instruction of the lesson begins. In order to write your anticipatory set, consider asking yourself the following questions. How can I involve as many students as possible, piquing their interest for the subject matter to come? How should I inform my students of the lesson's context and objective in kid-friendly language? What do the students need to know before they can delve into the lesson plan itself and direct instruction? Anticipatory sets are more than just words and discussion with your students. You can also engage in a brief activity or question and answer section to start the lesson plan off in a participatory and active manner. Direct instruction is how you will deliver the lesson information to your students. The methods of direct instruction could include reading a book, displaying diagrams, showing real-life examples of the subject matter, using props, discussing relevant characteristics, watching a video, or other hands-on and/or presentational steps directly related to your lesson plan's stated objective. Before you move on to the next part, check your understanding to ensure that your students are ready to practice the skills and concepts you have presented to them. When determining your methods of direct instruction, consider the following questions. How can I best tap into the various learning modalities, audio, visual, tactile, kinesthetic, etc., to meet the learning style preferences of as many students as possible? What materials, books, videos, mnemonic devices, visual aids, props are available to me for this lesson? What relevant vocabulary do I need to present to my students during the lesson? What will my students need to learn in order to complete the lesson plan's objectives and the independent practice activities? How can I engage my students with the lesson and encourage discussion and participation? In the guided practice section of your written lesson plan, outline how your students will demonstrate that they have grasped the skills, concepts, and modeling that you presented to them in the direct instruction portion of the lesson. While you circulate the classroom and provide some assistance for a given activity, the students should be able to perform the task and be held accountable for the lesson's information. The guided practice activities can be defined as either individual or collaborative learning. As a teacher, you should observe the student's level of mastery of the material in order to inform your future teaching. Additionally, provide focused support for individuals needing extra help to reach the learning goals. Correct any mistakes that you observe. The closure is the time when you wrap up a lesson plan and help students organize the information in a meaningful context in their minds. A brief summary or overview is often appropriate. Another helpful activity is to engage students in a quick discussion about what exactly they learned and what it means to them now. It is not enough to simply say, "Are there any questions?" in the closure section. Similar to the conclusion in a 5-paragraph essay, look for a way to add some insight and/or context to the lesson. It should be a meaningful end to the lesson. Look for areas of confusion that you can quickly clear up. Reinforce the most important points so that the learning is solidified for future lessons. The closure step is a chance to do an assessment. You want to determine whether the students need additional practice or you need to go over the lesson again. It allows you to know that the time is right to move on to the next lesson. You can use a closure activity to see what conclusions the students drew from the lesson. They could describe how they can use what they learned in the lesson. You can ask them to demonstrate how they would use information in solving a problem. The closure can preview what the students will learn in the next lesson and provide a smooth transition to the next lesson. Through independent practice, students have a chance to reinforce skills and synthesize their new knowledge by completing a task on their own and away from the teacher's guidance. It is the part of the lesson where students are given the opportunity to practice what they have just learned. In writing the independent practice section of the lesson, consider the following questions. Based on observations during guided practice, what activities will my students be able to complete on their own? How can I provide a new and different context in which the students can practice their new skills? How can I offer independent practice on a repeated schedule so that the learning is not forgotten? How can I integrate the learning objectives from this particular lesson into future projects? Here, you determine what supplies are required to help your students achieve the stated lesson objective. The required material section will not be presented to students directly, but rather is written for the teacher's own reference and as a checklist before starting the lesson. The lesson doesn't end after the students complete a worksheet. The assessment section is one of the most important parts of all. This is where you assess the final outcome of the lesson and to what extent the learning objectives are achieved. To sum up, we've talked about definition, the importance, and 8 components of a lesson plan. See you in the next lesson.